Hey everybody, this is Sheets, and I haven't done a full NHL process breakdown in quite a while. Um, Fortunately, we have Adam Perry, who is, and quite honestly, much better than I am at playing NHL DFS, doing some videos for us now. So I felt as though I could kind of step aside, but I wanted to do this anyway, just partially to prompt myself to continue to look at my process. And people do ask, how do you go about playing? So I figured I would go through this. And this is going to be kind of like from beginning to end as far as my research of the projections leading into the actual lineup build. Now, what I don't get into is the internals of how the projections are created. Um, but I start with the projections that I kind of, that I work with, and I go over how to analyze them and then how to put those into lineups using SaberSim. So let's go through this again, and this is just exactly my process from beginning to end. So first thing I like to do is I look at the slate um, to see what we're dealing with here. So tonight we have a 5 game slate, and I like to just kind of see what this is all about. So there's 3 7 o'clock games, a 7:30 and an 8 o'clock. So it's not a lot of late swapping. It's not a big time commitment. Okay. So you're probably going to have to put in one set of lineups just before 7 o'clock. And, if you were going to have a computer do it automatically for you, you would also come back in at 7:25 and late swap what's remaining. And then at 7:55 and late swap what's remaining as well. Just again, the more, information you have at your disposal, the better. So the longer you wait to finalize your lineups, the better. And with SaberSim, it can, you can see what ownership has already been recorded on some of these players and things like that. Even if you didn't have SaberSim, you can see what ownership has been recorded on players and things like that. So you can adjust what your future lineups are going to look like, or your future exposures are going to look like throughout the slate. But overall, very nice, handy slate. The other thing I then like to look at is the projections. But before I do that, I always like to upload my dummy lineups to SaberSim just so that I have them. And the reason why I do that is, should I opt to use the contest sims, I will have that information already entered. So, like for example, we'll hit download template from DraftKings, and I've already saved these, so I cheated a little bit in DraftKings. So then we'll upload them to here, and you'll see that it says contest 52. So I'm in 3 contests with 52 entries, and that would be the energy line, one entry in that, 50 lineups in the overload, the MME, see that 50 lineups, and then one lineup in the blue line, the single entry. And as you'll see, what SaberSim does is it pre-enters all the data of number of entrants, what first prize is, what second, what the cash rate is, things like that, so that it can do a good job of putting the right lineups into the right contests. Now you see it has the field lineups that it's going to use to determine what the field is likely to do, and I don't ever override that with my own stuff, especially with hockey. I let SaberSim do its thing as far as that goes. So now that it's up here, let's go back and take a look at these games. Take a look at the players and things like that. So I'm looking at my sheets, which are on TrueDFS for premium subscribers. I just want to show you the way I kind of think about the slate and the way I look at it. So again, for those of you who've seen this before, I apologize, but I don't think I've done this the whole season. So what we're looking at here are ranking these players by different metrics. So one way you could do it is by pure fantasy points. Another way you could do it is by points per dollar. And another way you could do it is by Sheets value score, which is basically my own formula. It's a combination of fantasy points and points per dollar, fantasy points, salary, whatever, giving a little bit of a benefit to those with just the higher fantasy points. And you'll see the even strength line, the projected power play line, and these are, not always 100% accurate, but this is what I work with. So the first thing I like to do is I want to sort this whole sheet by Sheets value score. And what you're looking for in hockey, what I look for, I just like to eyeball this, like the first 20 players or so, and see if you can find a glut or a cluster of players that are from the same team, right? Because hockey is such a correlative sport, somebody shoots, somebody scores, somebody gets the assist, etc. That's what you want to see. So the first thing I look at here is not too much. Yeah, you know what? I see a couple of Tampas. Not really though. Just only one or two Tampas from the same, well, from the same team. We get to the same line in a minute. So not too much. Toronto, I see Austin Matthews and Nylander and Tavares. That looks pretty good, but you'll see that they're not on the same line. They're on the same power play line, which is might be kind of good enough. So Toronto, 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 that looks good. Then I see two guys from Buffalo on the same line. So that looks pretty decent. So I would be expecting to see something either Toronto, maybe Tampa, maybe Buffalo. And then you also see two Devils here. The Jesper Bratt one is interesting because he's on the third even strength line, but on the first power play line. So those are probably the lines that you'd expect to see once we started to look into this. The other thing I don't see is a lot of value. Like I don't see any. The closest thing I see to good value is like a $3,700 defender here in Jake Middleton. So if you're hand building, it's a good idea to just see if there's any kind of cheapo that you can install into your lineups here. So what I like to do, and again, this is not, you can't do this when you have 10 minutes to post or whatever, but I like to kind of just try to hand build before I use Saberson. Before I do that, I have to see what the possible stacks could look like. Now, again, I already said I think it could be Tampa or Toronto, right? Or what did I say, maybe Buffalo. Unfortunately, I do have this stack finder here that I created, which rates the top, five guys from each team based on different metrics. So I could sort these by three different ways. One is by column B, which is just raw fantasy points for each line. So if I sort it this way, you'll see that I have Toronto with the highest raw points. The other way I could sort it is by value. So that just basically means point per dollar. So point per dollar wise, you'll see Tampa is the top one. So you'll see like Tampa, Minnesota, Boston, right? And again, you go back to say raw points, you get Toronto, Tampa, Buffalo. So you see Tampa showing up in both metrics so far. So that's usually going to indicate probably the best play if you're going to find a team that shows up in both raw and value. And then you have this modified stack ranking, which again, it's kind of like Sheets value score rated that way. So once again, Toronto, Tampa, Buffalo. So these are the three teams. But if I had to pick a team that would be the best one, I would be the one that appeared in both the point per dollar as well as Sheets value score and raw points, and that would be Tampa. So what I would try to do is just try to build like a hand built lineup with with those guys in it. So let's just see. Let's just see what this would look like. Okay. So what I do is I look and see which of these guys appear in all these different metrics. So it looks like it's going to be Kucherov, Cirelli for sure, and it looks like Hedman. So let's start with those. Okay, let's go to Tampa. We'll go to Kucherov. What did I say? Hedman and who else? Let me see. It was Hedman, Kucherov. Did I say Cirelli? Let's see. Let's see who appears in all of these things. Points is not in all of them. Gensel is not in all of them. So we're going to start with Kucherov and Hedman. And then let's see what the cheapest ones are. So Cirelli, that looks pretty good. So let's put him in. Let's see, center. Okay. Cirelli. And then we could play Hagel. Hagel's the guy we can play. A little cheaper. So those four. And then let's see, who's the fifth guy we could play? Play Moser. Yeah, so these are, again, this is kind of a cheap way to play. Point maybe. That would be nice. No, I don't think we can get there. So what does Moser cost? Okay, so this is a combination. We don't have exactly perfect correlation here, but if we're going to play this kind of like all these Tampa guys, I think this is a good way to start. And it can also, it opens up some other guys. So, like for example, if you wanted to then get to say some Toronto or some Buffalo or whatever, let's just sort by say value stack here. Maybe Minnesota. That's actually not a bad idea because that's probably going to be sort of low owned. So, whoa, we shouldn't say that actually. That actually looks pretty highly owned. Oops. Maybe Boston. Maybe some of these cheapos over here. Maybe you could play that. Um, let's look at the goalies first, and we'll take a look at that. Now, my approach to goalies is almost similar to that of soccer, and that it really doesn't matter who you play. I mean, you want to pick goalies who fit the rest of your lineup. So I try to find the cheapest goalie that projects the best. And fortunately, you have an $8,200 Vasilevsky, and then you have a $7,800 Kemper. So the good thing about the Kemper play is that he's playing against what probably going to be some chalky Minnesota guys. So let's go play. Let's put Kemper in to see what that looks like. And then at 4,500 a man, then you could put in some cheapos from some of these other games. So how do you do that? I mean, now you can just start searching by point per dollar. And seeing what's up. We already have Mosher in. Um, this is that Jesper Bratt thing. Sorry, I had to pause for a second to take a call, but while I was on that call, it kind of dawned on me what you can do here. You could go back to the Devils and play that Bratt guy because you could pair him maybe with someone else from the third line and then just find another cheapo to go in here. So this is how you can play, without using the Sims, just using the whatchamacallit, just using the projections. And then I can't, it's pretty easy to find, a $3,600 player to play at wing. I don't need to tell you how to try to do that. But actually, what is Brad? Is Brad a wing? Actually, so what we could do is put Brad in actually as the wing. Now it's even easier. For example, who's 3,600? Oh, I could play. I could play Gord from Tampa. I could play Cates from Philadelphia against Tampa. Ooh, that might even be sweeter. Yeah, I think that's actually a better idea. So, like for example, now we're not actually going to do this, okay? But just using our projections, you can build your lineups thusly. Okay, so now what I want to do is let's now use SaberSim to put all of this together. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to upload these exact same projections over to SaberSim and see what we get. I'm presuming that we would get something similar, right? If they're using the same projections. So let's put it all in here. We'll exclude unlisted players. We're not going to construct our own fields. And let's just build 5,000 lineups just like this. Now, there's a couple of things we're going to have to do after we finish this. Number one, we have to be very greedy about the stacks. And number two, we're going to try to do contest sims also. And here's what I'm going to expect to see. Actually, let's put this over here so we can do the big review. What I'm going to expect, this is just NBA. What I'm going to expect to see when that's done is I'm going to expect to see a lot of the same guys we talked about in the original builds, meaning that a lot of Tampa, Toronto, guys like that. And then when we run the contest sims, I'm expecting to see something completely different. That's just the way hockey works. But let's just see. Okay, almost done. The big reveal. All right, so look at all these Tampas as being the highest home players, right? No big surprise. Okay, as I mentioned. Actually, what we do in this pool, let's just see. Oh, that's like the whole pool. Actually, that doesn't go into it. So If we do stack exposures, oh, okay. Well, hold on, team stacks. So team stacks, we have 63% Tampa, 28% Devils. Okay. So it's no surprise. And it's almost very similar to exactly what we did. Okay. Because your original builds using Sabres or whatever, it's going to be based on projections. Now, the next thing that I would want to do is I want to just get rid of the bow wow stacks. And what that means is that I don't want to play anything other than 4-3s, 6-man onslaughts, or 5-2s. Now, that is a decision I make that you don't have to. And some people think this is way too restrictive. But again, true transparency, right? I just share what I do. I'm not saying what's right. So we have to get rid of the 3-2s, get rid of all this stuff, and only be left with the ones we want. Now, I might keep a 3-3-2 allowed just because there are only 5 games. But aside from that, we're going to keep it like this. And now what I like to do is go back and check and see what we would get. Still, it would be 31% Tampa, 60% Devils. So what you could do is I could just fill these into my lineups and just kind of roll with it. But I want to run the contest sims. So we're going to run the contest sims. And basically what this is doing is it is taking our 5,000 lineups, comparing them to what they think the field is going to play, and then create the best set of lineups from an ROI perspective that, how it's going to do against that projected field. So let's hit contest sim. And again, we're in 3 contests, right? So it's going to sim all of our lineups against all 3 of those contests. And as you'll see, boom. So things are very different, right? So where we used to have all the Tampa and whatever, now the top owned stack is actually Buffalo. Buffalo, then Devils, then Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, why, you may ask, is this the case? Well, all I can say is that different sports respond differently to applying contest sims. Like in the NBA, because there's very little correlation, really, and these guys are so predictable and projectable that you're not going to get a huge delta between what you would get without running sims in the NBA and what you get with running sims. But in hockey and baseball, for example, because the distribution of results is so wide, you could have these baseball players, for example, get zeros, and then if they hit a home run, they smash. And you could have hockey players, for example, they're goal dependent. If they get a goal, they're in great shape. Otherwise, they bust. In addition to that, with hockey, you have all this correlation that if you get 1 goal right, you might get a whole bunch of guys right. If those guys are low owned, you're going to get such an incredible benefit from that you're going to get, after running contest sims, results that are just much different than if you weren't running contest sims. So what you're going to do is you're going to what I like to do is kind of roll with these contest sim results, and this is kind of who I'd be getting. The one thing I do want to double check is the stack exposure. Make sure the rules didn't get affected. They did not, which is good. And the only other thing you consider doing is, instead of playing with using direct fill, in that it just basically assigns the lineups to the best contest for them, is to do autofill. And what autofill does is something I don't like to do in hockey. What autofill does is really make sure that you have different lineups in each contest. And what that and the way that works is that when you put on autofill, it will first run the sims for example, if we did this, it would first run the sims for the energy line, take the best one lineup for that, then take it out of the pool, rerun everything for the overload, take the best 50 lineups for that, take all those out of the pool, and then run it again for the blue line and put the one lineup in there. So what this requires you to do, if you're going to play that way, is you have to rank these in a certain way where you actually prioritize what gets what. For hockey, for whatever reason, I don't like to do that, so I will just stick with direct fill. And the only other thing you consider doing is messing with this min uniques to get yourself a little bit of diversity. And the way you can do that is you could go more min uniques than one, but when you do that, you have to keep track of what that decision is doing to your overall portfolio. So right now you have an average projection of 85. If I go to min uniques 2, how is it going to affect that? You have a median destination ROI of 64.9%. When you go to min uniques 2, how is it going to affect that? You have the stack type the way you want it. All 6s, 4 3s, and 5 2s, maybe a couple of 3 3 2s. When you go to min uniques 2, what is it going to do to that? So let's see. Min uniques 2. Okay, it really didn't affect it at all. So we can keep that. Let's go to min uniques 3. Still not bad. What if we went to min uniques 4? All right, now it affected it a little bit, but it's still not bad. I mean, it affected the median destination ROI not that much. So it's very rare to be able to do this in a 5-game slate, but I would take advantage of this. So let's keep that. We'll hit save to contest. We'll hit download, and then we will upload all these to DraftKings. Now, again, this is presuming that the slate lock right now, which is this not, but this is the way I look at the slate. And the only thing I will do differently, when it actually comes time to fire this stuff, is I won't go through that stuff about, looking through the actual projections and things like that. I will trust at that point the projections are pure and just get into that lineup build. And that's pretty much it. Make sure you check your goalies, make sure they're actually playing. And yeah, that's it. Hopefully that helps. I encourage you again to follow Adam Perry's videos on this matter, on the sport, which are, I don't know if the videos are better than mine, but I know his knowledge is better than mine. So I certainly encourage you to listen to him on that. And that's it. Good luck, everybody.